Welcome back to Watch the Booker Man and to episode number 93 of Paul Heyman's TNA. And for me, this is probably the biggest episode of the series so far because of something that comes later in the night. You could say that previously Bound for Glory 10-10-10, when the New Age arrived, that was a huge night. But tonight we begin with the New Age of Honor arriving at the building. Those guys are asked if the Ring of Honor backer is here tonight and whether they're willing to respond to the rampant speculation about his identity that we've been hearing throughout the week. Jimmy Jacobs tells the person behind the camera who is asking the question that they need to practice a little bit of patience. They waited 10 months for the New Age to arrive and change everything, and tonight everything changes once again. Steve Corino adds that the man will be here at some point tonight, but he happens to be a very busy man. Because of that, he's making his own way to the building, but they can confirm tonight is the night that the summer of Saviour begins. So not a great segment to open the show really, but I'm sure that the segment we've got later on tonight is going to get a very good rating. So while we do lose heat to the storyline, pretty sure this will still be okay. A recap from last week's Impact is then shown, with footage of Samoa Joe's confirmation that this Ring of Honor backer would arrive this week. It's going to be a heavy sort of thread line throughout the show. Joe followed this up by attacking AJ Styles during the main event. Paul Heyman was also questioned about the identity of this man when he left the building last week, having announced that he is taking a small leave of absence from the promotion. That footage will be shown later in the night, which the commentators confirm as they introduce viewers to the show. They also put over our huge main event. AJ Styles will go one-on-one with Samoa Joe, and after Joe put AJ through a table last week, that's what we get in a tables match. Before then, however, Mauro Ranallo and Taz put over the huge opener to our show, as Chris Hero, one half of the Kings of Wrestling, will go one-on-one with one half of the World Tag Team Champions, Jeff Hardy. So this is a better segment as we go into what I think is going to be a really good opening match. We get fantastic heat and great wrestling in a very strong 79 rated match, an 81 from Chris Hero and a 74 from Jeff Hardy. But it is Chris Hero who picks up a huge victory over one of the biggest stars in the company, 13 minutes and 43, but we can see there is some outside involvement. Jeff Hardy goes for the Swanton Bomb, Claudio Castagnoli gets up and grabs his leg. We then have Sting, who is at ringside with Jeff Hardy, come out and neutralise Claudio Castagnoli. This, however, allows Jimmy Jacobs to throw in the loaded elbow pad to Chris Hero, and when the referee's distracted, he doesn't see Hero load up that pad. Hero then hits the elbow to Jeff Hardy, so not a clean victory, but nonetheless, Hero again, he's picked up a few big scalps since coming to the company, and this is yet another of those. Sting returns to the ring after the match to check on Jeff Hardy, and it's clear that he is furious with the members of the New Age. They're backing up the ramp, happy with a job well done, when Sting grabs a microphone. Fired up, Sting challenges the men at the top of the ramp to face him next week, 3 days before Jeff Hardy and Sting make their first defense of the World Tag Team Championships against the Kings of Wrestling at Victory Road. He says he doesn't care which one of them it is, he just wants to fight one of them. Mauro and Taz then put over the fact that this will be Sting's first match on Impact in over 2 years. He's been strictly pay-per-view since I started this save, and for a little bit he was kind of not working a regular schedule before in late 2009, so that will be a huge moment and hopefully a big draw for next week's show. Another very good segment, as you would expect from Sting. Something to note there is that Jeff Hardy has a gimmick which is getting stale. The footage that was promoted earlier is then shown as Paul Heyman was asked about the ROH investor's arrival as he left the building last week. Paul Heyman says that of course he knows who he did business with, but he doesn't understand why that person couldn't just pick up the phone if they had an issue with the deal that they'd made. He isn't willing to comment any further. He can't comment any further on this man. He is then asked about his small leave of absence that he's taken, with a suggestion having been made that now is the worst possible time that he could have taken off. A sentiment that AJ Styles shared with him last week. Paul Heyman pointed out the shiner on his face from when Bobby Lashley punched him and reiterated he is not willing to comment any further. Heyman feels that after the physical attack from Bobby Lashley, he deserves that time away, but it has to be said there is something to the fact that as this investor is arriving, Paul Heyman will be nowhere to be seen. Surely he would want to be there to defend the company that he is currently in charge of. Mauro and Taz then sent to the back, where AJ Styles is interviewed by Jeremy Borash, and he's given his reaction to what we've just seen and what happened last week, saying that sooner or later he knew that Paul Heyman would let them down. He never expected that they'd be able to rely on him from the moment he arrived. But Paul Heyman isn't TNA. He might try and make it seem like he's the one who's moulded and shaped and curated this company, but TNA is every single wrestler in the back who is ready to stand up and fight for this company. Until recently, he thought Samoa Joe was one of those. Part of him now doesn't know if he can trust anybody. But tonight, none of that matters. Tonight is about two men, and it is about revenge on the person who choked him out 2 weeks ago. He wants to send a message to the New Age of Honor and this so-called Saviour. AJ is then asked about his Ring of Honor World Championship defense in 10 days and whether he can expect to be at 100% given what happened last week and the upcoming tables match. Styles says that if this was any other match, maybe he'd consider taking the advice that he'd been given to sit this one out, but he can't let Samoa Joe get away with what he's done, and tonight is the perfect time for that revenge that he spoke about. We then get the second match of the night, and it is DNR defeating April Hunter and Jazz, 6 minutes and 52. Daphne pinning Jazz with a roll-up. Decent performances in there other than April Hunter, and it does say that she was the weak link. A 43 is an okay rated match. To be honest, I've not booked either of these teams particularly strongly, so I don't think it's a match that anybody would be massively interested in, but I do think that it's good for Daphne and Roxy to pick up a victory there. We then get the team standing tall together. April Hunter and Jazz are getting in a heated debate on the outside. Things have not gone well for those two since the beginning of their alliance, and the commentators say that the strain is beginning to show. I did think that we'd be able to give April Hunter and Jazz a push when they came in, but I think a mixture of them not being that over, poor performances, and just not really finding the right spot for them in the division means that they've not really been able to gain much momentum. This is, however, a big win for DNR, like I said, who will hope to keep their momentum going following this match. We then get Samoa Joe's side of the story as he is interviewed also by Jeremy Borash ahead of the match with AJ Styles tonight. Joe is straight to the point, saying that he is going to leave the carcass of AJ Styles in the middle of the ring tonight, in the rubble of a table. JB asks Samoa Joe about his betrayal of AJ Styles 2 weeks ago, but he's quite tentative when asking the question because Joe is putting off a very intimidating air as he is interviewed. Samoa Joe says that he got a call from an old friend a few weeks ago, and he gave Joe the wake-up call he needed. Nobody has been able to wrap their head around why Samoa Joe did what he did, but by the end of the night, he's sure everybody is going to understand. For far too long, Samoa Joe hasn't been thinking about number one. He sees this war between TNA and Ring of Honor, but he doesn't have to represent anybody but himself. 2 weeks ago wasn't about siding with the New Age of Honor, but about investing in his future. The saviour of Ring of Honor is coming tonight, and he knows that he's going to have a close eye on his match with AJ Styles tonight. We then go into the third match at the end of the first hour, and it is Kevin Steen and Paul London defeating Colt Cabana and El Generico when Paul London pins Colt Cabana with a shooting star press. This is the first time in TNA that we've had El Generico and Kevin Steen in the ring, and Generico is taken out of the equation when Kevin Steen hits him with a package pile driver on the apron. We then have Colt Cabana on his own trying to fight back against Kevin Steen and Paul London. We get another package pile driver. Steen brings in Paul London, and despite it being their first match together, a shooting star press sees them pick up a victory, and we're trying to put across that there is some natural chemistry between Kevin Steen and Paul London. Decent performances all round again, with particularly London and Steen doing well. Paul London already has a partner, albeit Brian Kendrick, who is currently out injured. I do think that the dynamic of Steen and London does work. They were kind of thrown together as two people who dislike El Generico and Colt Cabana, but at the same time, I quite like the team of them, so maybe we will see them as more of a fixture. They stand tall after their victory, the two men getting back to winning ways after their recent disappointments, neither of them able to become the Evolve champion at Slammiversary. Both had a couple of losses since then, Steen pinned by Strong, London pinned by Generico, so good for them to pick up a win, and while they may not be the closest of friends yet, there is a recognition between the two of them that they worked very well together in their first match as a tag team. Happy with that, and we return then for the second hour. which begins with the World Heavyweight Championship #1 contender Bryan Danielson defeating Shawn Spears in 4 minutes and 51 by submission with a cattle mutilation. That 81 is the level that we want to see from Bryan Danielson. Really happy to see that we've been able to build him up in these last few months, thanks in no small part to the decisive victory over Bobby Lashley. It's not the best match, but Bryan Danielson looks good out there, and yeah, very happy with that. He takes a microphone after the match, and Bryan Danielson talks about Kurt Angle being considered one of the greatest all time. He accepts that Angle has abilities that very few in the world can match, but he says that his perspective on pro wrestling and Kurt's perspective are very different. That's because Angle's journey to the top and his are also very different. Kurt was moulded and developed in the best facilities in the world from the moment that he made the switch to pro wrestling. Danielson worked his way from the bottom, wrestled whoever he had to, wherever he had to reach this point and to reach this level. He wonders how Kurt Angle would have managed coming up in the scene that he did. Bryan Danielson makes clear that he's not downplaying Kurt's path, just pointing out the differences. For example, he sees that Kurt has settled himself into this ideal role for him where he wrestles once a month. He's not wrestling week in and week out on Impact, whereas Bryan has done that ever since he came to the company, and he feels like that is somebody who should be leading this company as the World Heavyweight Champion, and also that match sharpness may well give him the edge at Victory Road. And that is what we're seeing more from Bryan Danielson here. A bit of an edge, some pointed words towards Kurt Angle. It's all been very respectful up to this point. But as we're seeing in reality at the minute, Bryan Danielson likes to twist the knife, and he does that in a really good promo. We are definitely getting the ratings that we need to see from Bryan Danielson if he is to be a viable challenger to Kurt Angle. And Angle will respond to Bryan Danielson's words on Evolve, learning the lesson from last week where we got a 69. We need at least a 71 for Evolve, and I'm pretty sure with the Kurt Angle promo, we will do just that. Danielson improvising well, and like I've said, we really are seeing his star rise in recent weeks. Going to the back, Matt Morgan, who is working on behalf of Paul Heyman with Mr. Anderson, is shown approaching ODB in the back. I've made a mistake here because I've scripted Matt Morgan but not scripted ODB, so probably a bit of a mess of a segment. ODB asks if Morgan has had any luck finding Brooke tonight. Morgan says that he's been informed that the beautiful people requested the night off tonight, and Paul Heyman granted it to them. Morgan has since learned that they have taken Brooke with them as a guest. ODB is annoyed, but Morgan does confirm that he has spoken with Angelina Love and Velvet Sky earlier tonight, and they say that Brooke has agreed to speak with ODB and explain everything in the middle of the ring next week, as long as their face-to-face takes place on the Beautiful People show. ODB isn't happy about this, but says that if it gets her in the same ring as those three women, then she will agree, and I'd argue that ODB may not have said the word women, perhaps she'd have described them in another way. A middle-of-the-road segment as we advance the ODB Trail storyline. Cutting a promo in the back, Homicide and Hernandez put over their desire to become the World Tag Team Champions. They want to be next in line after Victory Road, and to do that, they know that they'll have to go through the American Wolves this Saturday on Evolve. As they look to continue to promote the match, they're interrupted as Amazing Red returns to their clubhouse. I can never think of the word to call that. I'm not a big fan of the word clubhouse, but he introduces them to his recently debuted cousin Rosita. Entering the room without being noticed at first, there is then another interruption as Eric Young says he's been looking for Amazing Red all night. He's sorted a match for the two of them. They're going to team up. He's going to be ready to fit in with LAX on that show. Continuing Eric Young's new gimmick here, Homicide is not best pleased though. They're trying to cut a promo for their match on Saturday, but EY tells him not to worry, flashing the LAX hand sign before leaving the room. So something brewing there with EY as we go into the fifth match of the night, and it is that previously promoted Awesome Kong versus Madison Rayne. A decent match, good rating from Kong, okay from Madison Rayne, but it actually ends in a disqualification. Not when the Amazon runs in and attacks Awesome Kong as it says there, but actually she pulls the referee out of the ring when Kong is trying to get the 1-2-3. The referee then decides that he is going to eject the Amazon from ringside, and she pushes him over, despite this obviously not being part of the plan that Madison Rayne had. When he's on the ground, the referee calls for the bell, a DQ win for Awesome Kong after Madison Rayne has been so clear that she believes that she would defeat Awesome Kong. She had that plan all set out, but the anger of the Amazon, she's tried to tame her, but the Amazon is not somebody who it is easy to control, and that has actually cost Madison Rayne here. After the match, when Madison Rayne gets back up, she berates the Amazon despite her standing almost 2 feet taller than her. Rayne is furious that the Amazon didn't go along with her plan and demands that she apologises. The Amazon refuses and herself looks annoyed at how she's been spoken to by Rayne. Rayne tells the Amazon to get out of her sight, which the Amazon happily does. This is less a case of her following orders than her being aware of what's behind Madison Rayne. Rayne has clearly forgotten about who else is in the ring with her, but is quickly reminded as Awesome Kong gets her in an implant buster, slamming her into the canvas and leaving her down and out inside the 6 sides. So not a good night for Madison Rayne, a complete backfire. Not that good of a segment. I think it's good that we're getting more and more knockout storylines that are ongoing. Speaking of which, the top knockouts storyline will be advanced on Evolve as Mickie James confirms that she will be on that show. She says there'll be an announcement regarding her Knockouts Championship defense at Victory Road. Del Rey officially requested to invoke her rematch on last week's show, and Mickie James is ready to give her that answer this Saturday night. Attention then turns to the main event, but before that, Mauro and Taz hear of somebody arriving at the building. Cutting away to the parking lot, a man is shown leaving a vehicle with a hood obscuring his identity. We really can't see anything about this man. Returning to ringside, it is assumed that the person who has just arrived is the mystery ROH investor. So if anybody was expecting some suit and tie businessman, that's not what they're getting. It's a guy in a hoodie who the New Age of Honor have dubbed the Saviour of Ring of Honor. And we get a really good main event, superb wrestling and great heat. AJ Styles with an 88 is brilliant, but you have to say Samoa Joe has also held his own in there. These guys have great chemistry, as we know, shows in their performances. Unfortunately, the announcing letting us down, but we do get the crowd buzzing and gain heat to the storyline. But first and foremost, this match is a brawl, a bitter personal fight between two men who once stood shoulder to shoulder. Styles takes control after this and he sets up for a phenomenal forearm that will put Joe through a table. However, his leg is grabbed by this hooded man. By the time that AJ Styles gets free and jumps into Joe's path, he is caught and hit with the Uranage and thrown through the table by Samoa Joe. So AJ Styles defeated by the man who betrayed him a couple of weeks ago, but the assist goes to that hooded figure. After the match, he takes a microphone from ringside, removes the TNA branding from it, goes to the top of the ramp and sits cross-legged before removing his hood. The man who has been dubbed the Saviour is revealed as CM Punk. His gimmick gets a poor rating. It's a really good segment overall, but the voice of the voiceless, the saviour of Ring of Honor, and the man who went into business with Paul Heyman has arrived in the company. And I'm going to try something here that, well, I'm just going to give it a go. It might come across well, it might not. But CM Punk directs his promo towards a certain man in the ring, saying, AJ Styles, while you lay there, hopefully as uncomfortable as you possibly can be, I want you to listen to me. I want you to digest this because I have a lot of things I want to get off my chest. I hate you, AJ Styles. I've disliked you from the moment we met, but this isn't about you and me. This is about TNA and this is about Ring of Honor. And the truth is, I don't have an issue with a lot of people in the back. Some of them I'd consider among my closest friends. What I have an issue with is this company, with the commentators lying to the people every single week, with Paul Heyman taking credit for ideas he had no part in creating, and for wrestlers he had no hand in discovering. TNA did one thing better than Ring of Honor did, and that was whore themselves out to Dixie Carter and kiss the ass of her billionaire parents. I hate this idea that TNA is the best place for professional wrestling, because it's not. For almost 10 years, TNA has dipped its hand into its pocket and it has gutted Ring of Honor time and time again. It has stolen so much from the promotion that I once called home that there is no longer a home for me to go back to. I am the best wrestler in the world. I was the best ever since day one when I walked into the WWE, and I was vilified and hated since that day because, would you believe it, Paul Heyman saw something in me that nobody else wanted to admit. That's right, ironically enough, I'm a Paul Heyman guy. You know who else was a Paul Heyman guy? Brock Lesnar. And he split from that place just like I split. But the difference between me and Brock is that he walked away from this business and I'm going nowhere. And that's what this all comes down to. Because as a Paul Heyman guy, I watched as in 1 year he destroyed Ring of Honor and put them out of business. That's where I had no choice but to step in. I could not let TNA buy out my promotion and put it on the shelf. But from where I was powerless. I was voiceless, and there was nothing I could do as the man I trusted most in this business swept everything we built under the rug and just pretended that it never existed. And trust me, this isn't sour grapes. This is about the fact that when I finally realised that I had to leave the place that was making me sick, I knew that there needed to be somewhere for me to go, and TNA is not that place either. I put my hand in my own pocket so that on July 17th, 2011, when I was finally free, there was something waiting for me. And hey, let me get something straight. Those of you who are cheering me right now, you are just as big a part of the problem as everybody else, because you're the ones who are buying tickets and merchandise and keeping this circus going. Without you people, Dixie Carter would join a long list of people who tried to make an impact in this business using somebody else's money and failed. But I blame myself and how naive I was, because for a moment when Paul Heyman came into this company, I thought this place would get better. What I've learned since then is that the man who picked me out in OVW all those years ago isn't the same man who tucked his tail and went home when he heard I was coming to hold him accountable. That is what this all boils down to. I went into business with Paul Heyman for one reason. TNA cannot be trusted with the future of professional wrestling in their hands. It's been 7 years since I last stepped foot in a TNA ring, and I know that nothing has changed since then. In fact, let me tell you a personal story about my time in TNA back in 2004. As Punk begins to tell this story, his microphone is cut off and he begins to do what he did in the original pipe bomb as the show goes off the air. So that was very long, but I hope that, well, it's pretty clear I've done essentially a rewrite of the pipe bomb as close as I possibly could. CM Punk improvising well throughout the segment, and of course, this guy could put this into much better words than I have, but I just wanted to get across the reason that he's in TNA, why he went into business with Paul Heyman, and why he is now so pissed off about what's gone down. And this is the beginning of something huge for this series. I cannot wait for where this storyline is going. How amazing to have CM Punk on the roster. Possibly the main reason I did this save. I had Bryan Danielson, who I'd heard Gabe Sapolsky talk about. It was around the time that Paul Heyman was rumoured to come into TNA, and if that had ever happened, they'd have wanted to sign Bryan Danielson. So that was a story that really interested me. I had the New Age coming in, which I'd sort of come up with myself, but the three main pillars, I would say, or you could say four pillars to be fair, was Bryan Danielson, the New Age, CM Punk, and something in 2012 that we're not going to get into, because that is the end of Impact. It's just great to see him on the roster, to be fair. Really happy with that. An 81 rating, and we'll now go into Evolve. And the show begins straight into a match, of course. The commentators will be talking about the events of Impact, but we do get Jay Lethal defeating Roderick Strong with help from Maria Kanellis after a lethal injection. And I did know that these two didn't click, but we've involved them in a storyline together, so my fault really. Just thought we'd throw it out there to start the show, and hopefully by the end of the show we can get the crowd back in, because this has got subpar wrestling, two not great performances. I know that these two are definitely better than that, but Lethal picking up another win after his heel turn. Desmond Wolfe then comes out to try and get some revenge on Jay Lethal, who is typically evasive. He ends up at the top of the ramp while Desmond Wolfe takes a microphone. He calls out Jay Lethal on doing what he's literally doing at that moment, hiding behind Maria. He wasn't good enough without her help, so he doesn't deserve a shot at this Evolve Championship. As much as Wolfe wants to fight Jay Lethal, he's not going to just let Jay Lethal have a shot at this title. The title deserves more respect than that, and if Lethal wants a shot at him, he'll have to earn that opportunity. Mickie James then comes out and announces that she will face Sara Del Rey at Victory Road, but because of what she did during Alyssa Flash's shot at the title a couple of weeks ago, the match is now a three-way instead of a one-on-one. Mickie James defending against both Alyssa Flash and Sara Del Rey. Sara isn't happy with this and comes out and makes that clear. The two women getting heated but don't come to blows. Mickie points out though that Sara Del Rey should be happy. This means that when Mickie wins at Victory Road, Del Rey will still have that mandatory rematch because that has to be a one-on-one. So Del Rey does calm down a little bit there, but Mickie is confident that it's not going to matter how many shots she gets. Now she's got the Knockouts Championship, Mickie doesn't intend to give it away. Sarita then defeats Mischief, who isn't having the best time of it since her split from Alyssa Flash. Daisy Hayes at ringside isn't enough to help her. A 58 is good. Sarita with a very good 63. Happy to see that, and she's somebody else who we do need to push more, find a storyline for. It's another solid win for her. She's been on a pretty good run really. I think she's lost maybe one match this year, and that was against Sara Del Rey for the title. But again, direction in terms of storyline, more character, etc. Kurt Angle then comes out after the break. A very good promo, as we expect from him by now, responding to Bryan Danielson's words about how he perceives professional wrestling. And he says that Danielson's being pretty arrogant in his mind. He's not saying Bryan doesn't deserve the shot, but he can be arrogant himself. He tells him to look at the list of men that he's beaten. He is the last one standing. Kurt has of course proven himself time and time again, and he tells Bryan Danielson that any era, any company, Kurt Angle would have risen to the top, and he's going to find out firsthand exactly what that means at Victory Road. All green notes, gaining heat to the storyline. Can't wait for this main event of Victory Road. We then get a video package looking at CM Punk's debut promo from Impact. The pipe bomb dropped on AJ Styles and TNA. You've just seen that, so I'm not going to go any more into that, as we get a very good main event, albeit as it often does. The commentary letting us down. The Wolves are so good, 75 and 85 for two guys who haven't been here that long. Davey head and shoulders above the rest, but it is Eddie who pins Homicide with a die-hard 14 minutes and 2 seconds. Very competitive, very even, two fantastic teams, but at the minute it is the American Wolves who are getting the stronger push. We get the crowd buzzing and they stand tall. Once again, the ROH tag team representatives are proving themselves to be more than a match for the TNA guys, and that's a really good... I expected better than that for some reason. It's still a decent show, no complaints there. Certainly can't have any complaints this week. What a week for TNA. Arguably the biggest signing they've ever made. Maybe Kurt Angle probably was more of a big signing. Even Jeff Hardy, you could say, had more mainstream appeal perhaps. But I just think that for what we want to do with this company, for what he brings to TNA, he may well be the best signing they've ever done. Certainly the biggest signing that we've made since the start of this series. And for me, the biggest moment, full stop. We've got a few emails there. Mr. Anderson's contract coming up, so something to deal with there. Claudio Castagnoli praising Eddie Edwards. Really happy to see that. It's always good to see people you've brought in and build up, then take on the locker room leader roles, and ideally they're putting people over. I have seen Chris Hero and Kurt Angle kind of criticise people who I actually quite rate, so it's good to see somebody spreading positivity, and I agree, Eddie Edwards is somebody who is going to be huge for us. We get a decent TV rating, 1.228 million viewers. I don't know what more to say. CM Punk is in TNA. I will never get tired of saying that, and now is where this story begins. It's great to have him here. It's great to build up to the surprise in the debut, but now we have CM Punk on our roster. No further comment needed. Thank you for watching. Hopefully you'll join me for next week's show and for all the shows to come. Victory Road in 10 days, so it is the go home week next week, and I've got big plans for that show, big plans for Victory Road, big plans for the Build to Bound for Glory. This series, in my opinion, is just going to keep getting better and better. Thank you for watching. See you later.